The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to Paranormal Concept right here on Parasearch UK Radio with your host, Paul Brooke.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the new edition of the Paranormal Concept Show here on Parasearch Radio. And tonight's show, we've got a really interesting one. We have Kerry Greenaway as co-host tonight. So, hello, Kerry.
Hello.
Oh, you're really
I'm not quiet. I'm just concentrating. Hello, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm awesome.
Yeah, okay. A good day? Good week?
Yeah, not bad. So far, so good. Can't complain.
Really? Okay.
I can always complain, you understand. I'm a girl. But I won't.
Oh, cool. That's fine. Anything paranormal to report this week?
Oh, only I've had lots and lots of lovely new crystals on the way. I've been shopping, crystal shopping. But it's not really paranormal. It's more spiritual. But, you know me and crystal shopping. I love it.
Okay, so this week you bought some more stones. Awesome.
Stones. Grrr. He does it.
And tonight we're also joined by the Supernatural show, Gemma Jury. Hello, Gemma.
Hi, guys. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you.
Good. Interesting show last night.
Oh, absolutely fascinating. Absolutely. Like, I was in my element. The show went on for 2 hours. 2 hours, I tell you. Well,
we were doing the aftermath show tonight, so. So you can tell everybody all about it. Only for an hour, though.
Only for an hour?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not playing then.
Kevin, over to you.
Okay. Wow. I thought it was absolutely fascinating listening to a full version rather than the soundbite articles that you got on the newspapers or TV shows where Amanda was only given literally 5 minutes or 500 words in a newspaper. Listening to the full account, I found it so fascinating from so many different angles, listening to that, and I'm sure you did too, Gemma.
I mean, this is the thing, though, isn't it? I mean, you can literally sit and pick it to pieces from so many different angles. It's unreal.
Mm-hmm.
For those that missed it, you should definitely go back and listen to it because it was a really interesting show, and we got it was basically what was her full name?
Amanda Sparrow Large is her full name.
She married a 3-year-old pirate.
Yeah, she married. I did take notes last night as well, so if anybody does their pages flicking, it's me going back through my notes.
Yeah.
I do like to make the odd note, especially on something as interesting as this, because it's so easy to forget stuff. So his actual name wasn't actually Jack Sparrow, was it? It was John Teague.
Mm-hmm.
But he preferred to be called Jack.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't actually write down as to where the Sparrow bit came into it.
I think the Sparrow bit was only because she was
Jack Sparrow
an impersonator at a point. And so I think the media, not the media, but I think they sort of put that in there because he was called Jack Teague and then she was Jack Sparrow, and it became a bit of a soundbite. It became a sensational soundbite moment.
Well, that's how they sell the story, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to remember how big that franchise is of Pirates of the Caribbean. It's absolutely huge.
Well, it's safe to say I've still not seen it, in all fairness.
Jeepers women. What am saying on that one? That franchise is huge. So if you want to sell newspapers, anything with that stamp on it, I suppose. And to be fair, when we was listening to her, it did sound very like that to start with, didn't it?
Massively, yeah. The first few seconds, yeah, definitely. I was like, oh dear, here we go. But credit to her, she speaks a lot of sense.
Well, when she's talking about her pathway, her ritual, her Wicca pathway, she knows what she's talking about. There's no doubt about that. You know,
a very intelligent lady, without a doubt.
Yeah. I have to say, when I was listening to it, bearing in mind I work in that way myself, she knows what she's talking about. She's not somebody that's just picked up a spiritualist book and picked out a few terms. So I completely bought into it from that way. Now, if you work in that way, you work very ritualistic. You do trances, you do journeying. It crosses over into shamanism quite a bit. You know what I mean? So, and when she was explaining some of how she connected to this spirit, she's right. That's how you do it. You know what I mean? That's what it is. So from that side of things, incredibly fascinating listening to somebody talking that way, who works in that way, and so she definitely knew what she was talking about in that way. Definitely.
I mean, the whole thing from beginning to end fascinated me, and it did, because obviously Kerry and Paul, you know how long I've had Amanda booked in for, waiting to come on the show. When that story first started coming out and it was all over the social medias, I was like, I need to speak to this lady. I need to find out what's occurring. I don't just want snippets. I want the full story from beginning to end. I want the facts, dates, times. I want the works, you know. A lot of people you will find come out with these stories, and then when you start putting a bit of meat on the bone, there's no consistency to it.
Yeah.
But with her, as Kerry's just said, from the shamanism, the Wicca, the spiritual point of view, everything she said is extremely valid points.
And is what you would do, is how it would happen, you know, when you're contacting, working with deities, or, you know, working in that way. So I have to say, I was very torn, because I could see it from a very psychological perspective. I could see it from a very, you know, working in that way myself, how that could have happened myself, and how she came a crop out under those circumstances. Some of the coincidental situations that came off the back of that relationship, again, it kind of fits the theory of energy exchange and spiritual contracts that you make. But I know Paul has a different opinion on that. I'm sure we'll get into that later on in the show. I'm sure. But I could see
not like Paul.
No, right? But I could see it from lots of different sides, lots of different points of view. And I think for me, that's what made it so fascinating. And she sounded sane, very sane.
Well, I told her several times, you know, there's lots of people that will have heard her story, seen her on TV, seen Facebook or other social media platforms, and said, this woman is, can I say it?
Yeah, go for it.
Batshit crazy. Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing between us in the background, but whilst we knew we had her booked, we're going, God, what if she is batshit crazy? Like, what if she is absolutely batshit crazy? And it was only in conversations before the show that we kind of were starting to go, we don't think she is completely.
Yeah.
We don't think she is.
Well, I'd been speaking to her anyway, just because I knew that she had another radio interview lined up. And as far as I'm aware, she's not done that many interviews. But because I knew she had one lined up, and it was literally the week before us, or was it the Friday night? I think it might have been the Friday night as we was coming on the Monday. And I was thinking, you know, well, I spoke to you anyway, Kerry, and you know, we was like, what if she has a bad interview and then wants to back out? So I'd been speaking to Amanda quite a bit anyway, just to make sure that everything was okay. giving her reassurance, because the last thing I'd want is a guest coming on with such a delicate story, feeling stressed about coming on, because, that nobody wants to be stressed about an interview. So I'd spoken to her quite a bit, and I said to you, Kerry, didn't I? I said, like, the woman does not seem batshit crazy to me.
And she didn't come across that way at all. Her story, obviously, if you want to look at the just the surface level of it, woman marries a 300-year-old spirit ghost of a pirate. In itself,
named Jack Sparrow.
Yeah, is open for ridicule.
Of course it is.
It's open for ridicule, and we were quite concerned, weren't we, that it wouldn't be received in the vein that it was. We wanted to hear her story of how this happened. And I have to say, credit where credit's due, I've watched a lot of interviews today to see if I could find any inconsistencies. And yes, a lot of them are like 5 minutes, 10 minutes on chat shows and stuff like that. But the bare bones, and even in the in-depth, it was all consistent.
Yeah, massively. I mean, I'd done my research anyway before interviewing her. I'm friends with the lady on Facebook, so I obviously stalked through her Facebook page. Let's not make out nobody else does it. I'm sure everybody does it. If you're going to interview somebody, you want to know about that person that you're interviewing.
Yeah, too right.
Just a little bit,
So I did. I went through all their social media platforms. I'd struck up conversations in the lead up to the interview and the months beforehand. I've gone through all of their TV appearances and newspaper clippings, and same as you, Kerry, very, very little inconsistencies in their story. I mean, I've seen it from the other side now, and I did say this to Amanda last night as well before the show, didn't I, Kerry? I said after doing TV and newspaper interviews myself, I can now see that from a different point of view, because before I would have said, batshit crazy, what a waste of news, blah, blah, blah. But then when the shoe's on the other foot and you are actually put into that situation, it really isn't as easy as you think it's going to be.
And we know from knowing what was said to the newspapers how they changed things to make it fit their agenda.
Their criteria.
Their agenda in the newspaper, and sensationalise it more or twist it so it sounded more of you're all making thousands and thousands of pounds out of the paranormal, which you're not.
Apparently I'm loaded, so, jobs are good in.
I know.
Shall we all pop off to the Canaries or the Bahamas?
You just want to make yourself a pirate.
I just want to make myself a pirate. No, seriously, wishful thinking though, But after being there and seeing it firsthand, I can totally see now every article, whether it be in the paper or on TV, or even on the radio, they have their own agenda. And you have to fit their criteria, plain and simple. So after watching all those, reading all those, studying all of that information, to then interview her and get the full story from beginning to end.
Yeah.
It's not like it came across in the newspapers. He didn't just appear and say, hello, I'm Captain Jack Sparrow, let's go get married. And it was a long and drawn out thing. This went on over a period of years. When you look at it that way, now, I'm no expert in the spiritual realm at all, which is what I said last night anyway, Kerry. I said, Kerry's going to pop in because this is your area of expertise, or one of your areas. But from the little bit of information that I do know, I personally couldn't find fault. Could you?
No. The only thing
do you not think that the way she come across and the story, because it didn't change from the very beginning when she told it, do you not think that it could have been rehearsed? Or she's told it so many times that now she's started to believe it?
Well,
I think she believed it from the very beginning when it first started happening.
Yeah.
And if you look at it from a psychological point of view, then, which we will do, I'm sure, I can understand it from that perspective. And yes, don't get me wrong, but she lived it, remember? When you live something, you know, false memory in that. But yeah, she said she was writing a book right from the top. That's where she said, I was working part-time as a hobby as a Captain Jack Sparrow, and I was researching piracy because I was writing a book. So she knew, she knew that lifestyle and that era anyway.
Yeah,
you know
inside and out. Yeah, without a doubt.
That's it. But
just going back to the spiritual side of things, I mean, we'll go on, we'll shift it along to the psychological side. But from the spiritual point of view, when a spirit is making an attachment on somebody, Kerry, they do grind you down. It does happen over a period of time. Everything that she said in that respect was pretty much spot on, was it not?
Yeah, totally. I was sitting there listening, and I'm looking for an opening to jump in and go, but, right? The only time I could do that... But there wasn't one. But there wasn't one. And there was only one point I actually stepped in and said, why did your spirit team allow you to do this? And she said, the thing is, you have free will. And she goes, I had red flags. I did have those warnings, and I ignored them. She said, I also spoke to a lot of people that I'm involved in the spiritual field, and they had all connected with this spirit and been deceived in the same way. So I wasn't getting any... She goes, only one person had turned around and said, this don't feel right, this don't feel good. Only one person had said that to her out of all the other people that she had spoken to and worked in a coven with, and, you know, her physical team, as it were, had actually turned around and sort of said, only one person had said, it don't feel right, be careful. You know what I mean? So up to that point, so she's gone ahead, and we can look at why she did that, but she made a spiritual contract with Jack. She made a blood bond with Jack in a very old hand fasting tradition, which has changed over the years due to our perception of how we, perceive blood nowadays. But she's gone back to a blood ritual, hand fasting ceremony with Jack, which, yes, I know he can't give blood, but she symbolically gave hers.
Yeah.
So it's a blood contract still. And that is very binding. So he's been very deceptive. He was a very, very good deceptive spirit. He was very good at what he did. And she said he'd done it to people before her. She's found out afterwards that it had happened before. This spirit had done it before. He was very good. But when you look at Amanda and her life circumstance through this, you can almost see why it was easy pickings.
Oh, massively. I mean, I was completely blissfully unaware of the fact that, the poor woman actually lost a baby at the age of 3 months.
Yeah.
3 months old. She puts the baby down, goes back to check on the baby, and the baby's passed away. My God, literally, thank God Amanda was just chatting away last night, because I don't think there was a dry eye in the house. I think all of us went, oh my God, and just felt the emotion from that, because who could ever imagine losing a child at 3 months old? Mm-hmm.
Unexplained as well. It was an unexplained circum, which is basic cot death, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I just didn't particularly want to ask her. I didn't want to focus too much on the fact that, plus nobody wants to hear me sobbing down the radio anyway. But, I didn't want to focus too much on that, because, yes, that could be if, and I'm saying if, because, who are any of us to judge whether or not this whole scenario is real or not. If it was all from a psychological point of view, that would have been a massive contributing factor to her escalation, if you like.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you look at the mindset at that time, devastating circumstances. She admitted she'd been through several disastrous personal relationships as well.
Yeah. So she'd had the turmoil from unsuccessful relationships, we shall call it from now on. So unsuccessful relationships, the death of a baby. How much lower can a person actually feel and go through so much pressure and and not respond in some way. But then add on to that the fact that... Sorry, Paul, go on, what was you going to say?
I was going to say, so do you think then that her mental state sort of compensated by creating this spirit or entity or whatever you want to call it?
Well, I'm not saying that is what happened, because as I said, who am I to judge that?
At the end of the day, it's theory, and that's what we're talking about. We can't prove it either way.
No, exactly. You've got two personal perspectives, or you've got two perspectives on that. Either she created it out of this turmoil and emotional thing, so she is manifesting that spirit, or it happened. There are two ways of looking at it. You can look at it psychologically, which is what you're doing, Paul, is going, she's actually manifesting this situation herself out of her desperation and her need and her grief, and then you've got the other one, which she's low in her auric field, and this spirit has come along and taken advantage of that. You know, you can look at it in both ways. You can't prove either.
No.
Well, that's another thing I was going to say. I was going to say, like, if it was a spiritual thing or even a demonic thing, just see that she was low on her luck and wanted, I don't know, whether it wanted the soul or, do you know what I mean? And just took over the body slowly because she was so weak.
We've all been there at some point in our lives, though. We've all been that low that we just want somebody to come along and sweep us off our feet and give us a massive hug and tell us that everything's going to be all right. I don't think there's anybody in the world that has never felt like that. If they have, they're so lucky.
Yeah.
So lucky.
So you can see where she is at when this has happened for her. Plus, also, she also admitted she had done a spell work, putting it out that she wanted to attract her soulmate. And
the one thing that I've got with that is... she also said that she's not really into sex and doesn't particularly want a soulmate, but that was after the whole Jack thing. So,
I think after you've been through an experience like that, I mean, that's like the worst relationship ever.
But throw into that the asexuality or bisexual, whatever you want to call it, because there's that many different names these days that you just don't know whether you're being PC or not, do you? But well, it's true, isn't it? You know? Well, you know, like, throw that into the mix as well. So when she put out to the universe that she wanted a soulmate, she didn't specify.
Yeah.
No, she didn't specify whether it was spirit, whether it was, you know, she just wanted a soulmate. So when this spirit comes in her head, see, personally, I want a man in the physical. If I'm going to put out to the universe that I want a soulmate and they send me a spirit, I'll be like, I don't think so. Do you know what I mean?
I want a refund on that one.
Not quite what I meant, universe. And to be fair... any spell work I've done, I've never specified a physical being. I've just, you know, I have never done attract my soulmate spell. I would just like to point that out. But if I was going to, I wouldn't necessarily specify a physical. In fact, if you look through spell books and stuff, and go online and research love spells, which, trust me, I have done. Not for me, for somebody else. Because clearly it didn't work.
See, I didn't think love spells and that would work anyway because people have free will.
You can do it to attract a soulmate or a twin flame or a life partner. You can't do it for a specific person. So I can't sit here and go, I want to do a love spell on Paul Rook and make him love me forever. Do you know what I mean? Because you have free will. You know what I mean? That ain't going to work.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you do, darling, but, you know, if I was to do a spell...
I was just going to say...
Just take up the room on the bed. I know you do.
Jobs are good in there already. Save your spell. Not
like,
needed.
do I need a spell? Not really for that one. But, sorry, Steph. Oh, dear. But do you see what I mean? I couldn't do it against a specific person, and she didn't. She did it. She literally just put it out to the universe. She would like a soulmate. Now, a soulmate doesn't have to be a sexual relationship.
No.
It doesn't have to be sexual. It could be somebody that fulfills you in every other way and not necessarily involve the sex part of it. Personally, kind of important part of the relationship, I feel.
Yeah, I'm not being funny, but yeah, I don't think I'd sign up for a relationship without, if I'm honest.
But she did go on to have a sexual relationship with this spirit.
Which fascinated me even more, because how does that work? And you know, bless her, she answered every single question without even hesitation. There was no embarrassment there. It was just, here's what happened, here's the facts, A, B, C, D, off we popped, job was a good one, yeehaw.
I think she covered the whole alphabet. So much information.
No, she knew what she was talking about, and it wasn't. And she said, "It's not tantric. I don't know what tantric is. I don't work in that way. It wasn't just masturbation. That's not what it was." And she actually likened it to when you're paranormal investigating, you feel like you've been touched by a spirit. It's an escalation of that kind of thing. So eventually, once you've worked that energy to that level, it then you feel their body on yours. So it is a further step to that initial spiritual contact. So would that not come under? I know that she doesn't really know what tantric sex is. I mean, I could have got into it with her last night, but I didn't particularly want to come away from the story to focus on tantric sex. Yeah.
But isn't that what tantric sex is? It's a slow form of sex that is said to increase in intimacy, which is exactly what she was saying happened.
No, because you can do tantric without a partner. You can do tantric without a partner.
But is that not what you're doing with a spirit? Without a physical body?
No, because you're feeling their body on your body.
Right, okay.
So if, like you say, if you feel like when you've been on an investigation, you feel like you've been touched, just like on the hand or on the hair or something like that. Yeah, we talk about it in terms of like, well, it could be your mind, your body, natural twitches, those sort of things. Yeah, but if you want to go the spiritual way and believe it is a spirit that's touched you, which again, there are physiological ways that you can feel things that aren't people being touched. But from a spiritual perspective, you feel it. Some people say they feel like a spider web where the spirit passes over them. It's like a spider web feeling. Again, the skeptics out there would say there are known physiological responses that you can do it. So we're playing both sides of the coin here on this one. But if you're talking purely spiritual and you go down that road enough and working energy with one spirit enough, you can feel them if they want to touch you. So I've never had sex with a spirit, so I don't know exactly how it feels. I think
you need to get on that one, Kerry, just so we could do a show on that.
And it's not something that would happen in 5 minutes. You don't just meet a spirit and then go, oh, here we go, let's have sex. Do you know what I mean? It's not like...
So it would be something... 6 months, is that enough?
It would be so, maybe. It's so tempting to attempt it, I have to say. I don't know.
I'm not kidding. After listening to her story last night, I was beginning to think, is this going to be the only way I'm going to get a husband?
Having said that, listening to her full story, I was thinking, maybe not.
Maybe not, yeah. I mean, once you get to the end bit, you're thinking, I think I won't bother. I'll stay single. I'll get married with my Zimmer frame when I'm 92. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Yeah, not a problem. Just sounds like most of my relationships, in all fairness. Do you know what I mean? Starts off well, goes downhill quickly.
Exactly, right. Yeah, so maybe not an experiment I would like to try. But knowing when I work rituals and stuff like that, when that spirit, that deity, that entity steps forward, you know it's there. Do you know what I mean? You know it's there. And it's not something that builds up. It's not a 5-minute thing. The concentration levels and the focus that you have to have, and it would have been built up over a longer period of time. So she didn't just like go, hey, Jack, let's go to bed. Do you know what I mean? It would have taken a long time to get to the point where she was able to feel the physical sensations of having intimacy. So she would have felt like, this is awful, I can't even believe I'm saying this on live radio, but it is me, and you never know what you're going to get with me anyway, so unlucky cookie. And Joe's fault for being poorly and not joining us. So are we talking like she would have felt his body pressure on her, and entering her. Yes.
Yeah, very nicely put, yes.
Yeah. Like, I'm literally bright red right now.
You can hardly see you against your wall there.
Kerry's blending.
I get so uncomfortable talking about this sort of stuff live on air. But yes.
But why is it
Rename
shouldn't
you
feel uncomfortable? At the end of the day, why should we feel uncomfortable? She obviously isn't. She was more than happy to discuss it. But, you know, it fascinates me, like, how can it happen? Yeah, how can it happen? But it is like she said live on air last night. This is not a brand spanking new thing. This has been done time and time again by shamans, by the Haitians, you know what I mean? Voodoo, Haitians, shamans, you know what I mean? Those cultures embrace this. And in fact, if you think about physical mediumship, where you allow a spirit to come so close that they're transforming your face, and we've seen experiments done like this time and time again. And okay, the skeptics and the psychologists probably are rolling their eyes and going, "Wow, there's explanations for this." Yes, there are. One point of view on that. Yeah. But you can't discount... But that's all it is. It's points of view. It's opinions. You can explain it research, so far. But... Mm-hmm. You can explain it so far. But we still do the parlour seance room where you get a physical mediumship situation going on. So when you think how close a spirit can come to transfigure someone's face, and they're feeling the sensations of the ghost, they're allowing the body to step in and take over. This is slightly different because she's not having him take over. She's having him step so close she can feel him. Yeah. And that's the difference. So, yes, she would have had the sensations of that intimate situation. There was one question that I wanted to ask her but really didn't want to sound rude. Which was? Do you really want me to say? Well, she's not here. I'm more worried about the poor listeners that are going to have to listen to it, in all fairness. like the climax side of things from both points, would that have happened? Yes, it would have. But it would have happened energetically. So she would have still orgasmed. Yeah, because if you think tantrically or when you work... Well, you're assuming he was good, you know. Yeah, but... I can't exactly ask him, Paul, in all fairness. But if you remember, when we spoke to Shakti Sundari, she works with Kundalini energy, and that comes up raising through, and you can orgasm without physical touch. You can orgasm, you can do tantric. That. Yeah. And when you work tantrically, it can happen too. So if you're experiencing that, and that energy is there, then yes, you can have an orgasm. From the spirit's perspective, I would imagine he would get... Well, I'd be very surprised if he, shall we say, fired. You know, how would that happen? Well, he wouldn't be able to do that because he's energetic form. Exactly. He's in an energetic form. There's no physical body to climax for him. But apparently, maybe Paul could answer this one. Men can climax without actually having a release. Allegedly, I'm sure I've read that somewhere before now, that men can still orgasm without actually releasing their fluid. Semen. Don't ask me. I'm all new to this. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, well, that was something I didn't need to know. Listen, I'm learning now. I know it's not the most comfortable of conversations to have. Well, you can see that just by Kerry's face. Yeah, I just wish that everybody at home could actually see Kerry's face right now because it's hilarious. But it's fascinating, is it not? It is. Yes, it is. It is very fascinating. Experienced by most people, and as you said, it's like, how does that work? And I'm all about that. You see, yes, I'm a paranormal investigator. I love, not many people know it, but I am a complete tech geek. I love tech. And for me, it's all about the ins and outs, the hows, the whys. So why should this be any different? I just looked at Kerry as I said the ins and outs, and she was giggling like 10-year-old schoolgirl.
Well, that's Kerry all over.
So mature. I'm so immature.
Literally, throughout the whole interview with her, that was what I wanted to know. The ins and outs, the hows. I wanted some meat putting on that bone.
I have to say, I think you got it. I mean, she was very open as well. She was incredibly open.
More open than I think I would have been, actually, if I'd have experienced the things that she has, especially her physical conditions. I'm not so sure that I personally would have been as open about that as she was. But
no, that was like way above and beyond that, really.
It was a little, but how open was she? I mean,
I really don't want to
incredibly open about that. But again, from a spiritual perspective, you're looking at a spirit. Basically, she was unaware, but he's taking her energy at the time, and that was causing her a physical manifestation of illness. And she was very ill. I mean, we're not just talking like a little bit drained, a little bit worn out afterwards. We're talking like she had major physical issues in her body,
massive.
Which, since she stopped having physical relationships, even while she was still with him, they got better. She resumed physical relationships with him, and they came back. Now she's split up with him, touch wood, and we're going to keep in touch to make sure she's okay. She's touch wood, recovering from those physical conditions, and they're serious conditions. Without going into too much detail,
let's just talk about the fistula. Yeah, God. So just the fistula, not the PA, just the fistula. So the fistulas are caused through, the biggest cause of them is operations. Yeah. You have an operation, something goes slightly wrong, the fistula's formed, and it's impossible to get rid of. But yet she's had no symptoms of that since Jack's been gone. Mm-hmm. When she's going to have to, she said last night, she's going to have to go and have another MRI. Mm-hmm. If they say that fistula's gone, that in itself will be a miracle. Mm-hmm. We are talking Virgin Mary miracle.
I think if we went into medical science, there may well be an explanation to that.
Yeah, there will.
I don't think we can go as far as a miracle, but
not without surgery to remove it and corrections, and fistulas do not just disappear on their own. If I'm wrong, by all means, somebody please tell me. But
I think I found it really interesting when she was talking about how she entered the menopause and got tested for that, and that showed up in her test. She's been tested since, and it's reversed. She's now not going through the menopause. I mean, so you're
how can your body decide that you're on the menopause one day and then the next month say, "Oh, do you know what? It's not your time, lovey."
Yeah, I mean, it's like,
you know what I mean?
But this was like a whole. Again, it's not a short period of time. This had gone on over a long period of time, and that I find fascinating. I'm not saying it's proof that she, this spirit was doing what it did, because these things could have happened anyway.
Naturally, yeah.
They could have happened naturally. But when we looked into the PA and which is I can't remember the name of it, perennial.
Yeah, let's not even go on to the PA. Let's avoid the PA. Yeah.
Well, listen to the show if you want to know a little bit more about what we're talking about.
Sure, nobody will.
Which was on
Nobody
last night.
will want to know about that.
But when you start looking at the coincidences that surround it, I'm going to call them coincidences, surrounding the physical timing of her relationships with Jack and her physical symptoms and what she went through physically, it kind of makes you wonder. And that was one of the reasons she started to wonder about this spirit and whether or not he was what he said he was, and whether or not he was just taking her energy.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest point that got me with that was making her question was when she lost her dog, Toby. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But then, again, that's something else that you can look at from two completely different points of view.
Yeah. Completely.
So the whole story from beginning to end it has your mind boggled. So it has you questioning it from the spiritual side, but then the psychological side too, and then you end up. I mean, I'm sure you both will agree with me because I'm sure you have both. Well, maybe not so much you, Paul, but Kerry, you will agree with me that you have been backwards and forwards in your own head since last night's show.
Oh, God, yeah. I listened to it again this morning. Then I had about a 2.5, 3 hour conversation with the professor, Mr. Ashinib. And I have to say, there's a huge double layered thing on this one. Because every point that we were saying on the psychological side, you know, she worked as an impersonator. She was writing a book on pirates. She then went through a massive trauma in losing her child. She's desperate for a relationship with somebody, hence doing the spell work to get a soulmate.
Yeah.
That's indicative of that. And then all of a sudden this spirit comes forward. That's going to be very attractive to her, bearing in mind her research side of things and her work and the romanticism of the films. The name's very interesting. John Teague. Edward Teague was Jack Sparrow's father in the film, so there's a link with the name.
She's also got a family link with the name Teague too.
But she's got a family link with the name Teague, but she says she didn't know that until he told her that, and she went back. And then you go through the relationship. She starts getting manifestations of physical symptoms, as in she can feel him, he becomes more real. She then marries him, so she's invested 100% into the relationship on a psychological level.
Oh,
she then,
and a monetary level. I mean, how
yeah.
much must it have cost her to plan that wedding? That wedding, she had to go out on a boot, in a boot. I don't quite know where I'm going there, but she had to go out in a boat into international waters and pay for. What did she have? She had a pagan priest.
Yeah, and
a registrar and a medium. I'm pretty sure, not to mention that because she had a whole reception as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the monetary value of all that must have been phenomenal.
And so she's invested so far psychologically, which you do when you're planning a wedding, and whether it's to a physical or a spiritual. And
not a clue. Not a clue. Can't comment. Never done it.
So coming into her mental mindset there, she's completely invested in it. So we're looking at this purely psychological. Then physically she starts having problems, possibly perfectly natural. It would have happened anyway. Then the death of her dog starts to break down her investment in the relationship. She's looking for a reason as to why she's having this string of bad luck. Why is her dog not reacting to Jack? Because it could be a physical manifestation that she's created. So it could be almost like a Phillips experiment side of things.
Yeah.
Right. So you're looking at it purely, and then literally, so she then starts uninvesting. The dog is the final straw that breaks the camel's back on that, because her beloved dog won't pass with Jack, won't allow Jack to see him over the rainbow bridge, as it were.
But in saying that, she said, I mean, this is purely he said, she said, you know, we wasn't there, we don't actually know, but she said the dog was that poorly that had no sight anyway. Hearing wasn't great. Mm-hmm. So would the dog, being so poorly, have known that Jack was there anyway?
Well, if the spirit steps in, no, but if a spirit steps in to help you pass you over, so like, how many accounts do you have of people on the edge of passing who
loads
respond to their mum coming in or their grandmother coming forward?
I mean, we've had this conversation before. I spent that many years working in care, and I did end-of-life care as well, so I've seen a lot of people die over the years. But that was people that they know. This dog didn't have a clue who he was. Would I go cross over a rainbow bridge or any other bridge for that matter with somebody that I don't know? Possibly not.
No, but look at it from a psychological perspective.
That's
one of the straws. He, in her head, Jack is breaking a contract that she made with him, which was to look after anybody she cared about, like her dog being one of them, over into the afterlife. So he's now not fulfilling a contract that he made, his side of the contract on the spiritual level. He's unable to fulfill for whatever goddamn reason. That starts breaking down the psychological manifestation that possibly she has built up. So we're looking at this purely and simply from a psychological point of view at this point.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so yes. So from that point on, that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
Then she went back into hospital, and something inside her told her not to put her
She
wedding
went
ring
where?
on.
Where did she go?
She went back to hospital.
A hospital.
Shut up. Shut up. And, so
Look,
she went
he's
in,
been
had a
quiet
mate.
all this time.
I know,
He popped
right?
up, looked at the mix, bless him.
And something inside her at that point told her not to put the wedding ring back on. And then she started talking to other people. And when she started talking to all these other people, again, who had said, he feels a great spirit, it seems fine, don't worry about it, they were then saying, this, this don't sound right, does it?
Yeah, it's not right.
You
But
know.
then,
she then decides to break the contract herself by wanting to divorce and get rid. Yeah, and then, as she said, it took a hell of a job to get rid of him. If it's a psychological thing she's built up in her own head, yeah, that's going to take... It's like a belief system. You try breaking a belief system, it's a long process. It takes time, right? That's purely psychological. It takes time. You go to a therapist, and it takes work to change your mindset. It takes time to get over a trauma, and it takes a lot of work by a therapist to initiate those mental mindset changes. So she's doing it not with a therapist, she's doing it on the spiritual front. If it's psychological.
Does it work? Does it work, Kerry? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I don't know if I've lost you. Yeah.
No, I can hear you.
Does it work on the same level spiritually as cognitive behavioural therapy would work with a therapist?
Kind of. Because what it is, it's dealing with a belief system that you set. Now, if your belief system is spiritual, yeah, and someone comes along and says, right, we'll do a exorcism, or we'll do a unbinding ceremony, or we'll do a contract break, or something like that. Your belief system is they are going to break that contract. They are going to move that spirit over. So it is kind of very similar, but looking at it from different perspectives.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, because your cognitive behavioural therapy is looking at it from your brain's point of view and which part of the brain is taking over. So, yeah.
So, yeah. But it is basically breaking a belief system. Or if you want to look at it purely spiritual, you're breaking that spirit connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, and having done this work myself and having been to a shaman who broke something for me, it was incredibly powerful and it felt incredibly releasing. And I came off the back of that and felt like that had passed, that had gone.
Okay.
And I've also done it for myself too. So it is, again, a psychologist would argue I did it myself, or I changed that belief system myself by doing that kind of work, that there wasn't a spirit attachment, there was no contract binding, there was nothing there, it was just all in your mind. But how do they know that? Do you know what I mean?
At the end of the day, the mind is a powerful thing.
Incredibly.
So if you create something or a belief system in your mind, you've got to try and break that.
Uh-huh.
So you've got obviously all these different people that try and basically put a wedge in it somewhere to break the illusion.
But that had already started with Amanda. That had already started with the physical health that she was going through, and then the death of her dog. So that wedge had already started. So when she approached them to do the spiritual connection break, we'll call it, the breaking of that contract that she had made, the wedge was already started. So that willingness to have that broken was there, which is key. Because if you go in and you don't want it broken, then it's not going to work. Because, again, it's your belief system.
Yeah.
You've got something holding it there. But the The other thing with belief systems, I think people have to understand, is you don't just have one or two. You have levels. So she got brought up as a serious Catholic. So there, regardless of what she practices now, underneath her belief system in her conscious now, underlying that she's got a Catholic belief system. And that don't go. She might not buy into it now, but it's still there. It's still in her sub.
Yeah.
Well, she said herself, though, you know, you might have these beliefs, but you don't call upon them every hour of every day. It is only at your hour of need that you will call upon that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, oh God, that's quite a frame. I said, oh God, come on, give us a hand. And yet I practice deities and gods and goddesses. I don't practice a Church of England belief system, but when I'm at my deepest, darkest moments, sometimes it'll be a god that I call on. Some people would argue that that's coming out of the C of E belief system that got set in me in my school years. You know what I mean? So you have to understand belief systems aren't just one belief system. You've got several and lots of different layers that are built up over the years that you carry forward.
It's not one size fits all, is it?
No, and everybody's is different as well. But from a spiritual perspective, we've looked at it very psychologically. From a spiritual perspective, she's at her lowest. She's gone through this time. She's asked for a soulmate. This spirit comes along. He's thinking, I need energy. I'm going to take energy. I can be very deceptive in doing so. Attaches himself to Amanda, builds up that link, that relationship, and he is a spirit that's doing this to her. And it causes physical manifestations within her body, which is erupting in the physical problems she had, to the point where she ended up having operations and sepsis and all sorts of things going on. And he can't move the dog over because the dog's like, you're bad, I'm not going with you. And he wasn't what he seemed, because spirit can be very deceptive, particularly energy sucking kind of succubus, incubus type spirits. They're not, you know, when you start,
well, they're not going to bring you a cup of tea, are they, and toast in the morning, you know.
And they're not going to appear to you as something fearful. Succubuses and incubuses are often very portrayed as beautiful and very attractive and very sexual, and you're going to want to go with that. Do you know what I mean?
You're going to be drawn.
Exactly.
That is going to draw you in. Yeah, of course it is. But then there's no difference between what Amanda's been through, succubus, incubus, and your physical being relationships. There's still lots of deception. You know, there's still the chance that the same thing could happen.
And we talk about energy vampires on the physical plane, and that can happen. We've done a show on that before now, haven't we? I find the case fascinating. And, I mean, Ashley's put in the chat room mongoose, because I don't understand how you would investigate something like this, because you can't prove it. You can't prove a personal experience, no more than you could go out, you can, you know, have video cameras and everything else, but at the end of the day, it's still a personal experience that you're experiencing. Only you know how that felt. Only Amanda knows how that felt. From an investigation point of view, you can pull it apart and pin it down and look at logical links, like we've looked at Jack's, you know, the Pirates of the Caribbean link, the name. You know, we while we were on air, I was doing a brief look around, and there was a slave trader called John Teague who worked out of Bristol and Ireland. So if she's done research, that could be a tidbit she read that's got stored in her brain. You know, little things like that you start looking at. So from that perspective, you can sort of like see how it built up on a psychological side.
Oh, massively.
But then having said that, working the spiritual that I do, I could very much see how it happened in that way too. And that's what makes this so fascinating, and why it's worthy of allowing someone who has got a batshit crazy headline airtime to tell her story.
Oh, God, without a doubt. You know, I've still not come up with any conclusive which way I'm leaning towards more. Is it psychological? Is it spiritual? I still don't quite know where I sit with where her story is. Why can't what, sorry?
Why can't it be both?
Yes.
It started off as a psychological issue,
But then became a spiritual.
And then she manifested this spirit basically in her head and astral
projected it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then it sort of became a spiritual connection.
The problem
and then
is, though, with this.
So it carried on, drained her.
Yeah.
Well, when you start looking at tulpas, this becomes really interesting because there are cases of people that have worked in, and this is very Taoist and Buddhist perspective, you can create a tulpa, which is a physical human manifesting a spirit and then getting physically drawn emotionally and physically knackered basically when the tulpa is seen, and other people have seen the tulpa as well. And that is not a spirit that's popped down from heaven or wherever they are to do it. That's a physical creation.
Yeah, a physical manifestation.
A physical manifestation by a person that has done that. And they can be withdrawn as well. You can withdraw from that. There's a really famous case of a lady, and I can't bloody remember her name off the top of my head. But there's a really famous case, more older case about that than the Phillips experiment.
Yeah.
The Phillips experiment was a group of people creating the tulpa. The case I'm thinking about, I'm sure her name was Alexandra. Oh, I can't remember a blanking name. Should have written it down earlier. But if you look into that case, that's fascinating. And if that is what this situation is, again, it adds another level to it. It adds another layer to it. And shows the power of the mind, quite frankly.
But the mind is a wonderful thing.
And we still haven't proven if a ghost is real or not. So who can say?
No.
It could have been a spirit as well. So who can sit here and say, well, she's just crazy, that could never happen, spirits don't exist, she just made it all up in her own mind. You can't say that either.
No.
No.
But who are we to say that anyway?
Exactly. If she believes it and she lived it, then who are we to say she's lying or it wasn't how she perceived it to be?
And if we sit there and say, okay, well, we believe that she manifested it in her own mind, it's not saying that she's batshit crazy like everyone else. We don't need to make it disrespectful.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, that's how it happened. But at the end of the day, she believes it. So,
I still have so many questions. My relationship with Amanda is not over yet by a long shot. Bless her little heart, she probably will get me popping up with plenty more questions. Mm-hmm. And as she said, she's not bothered about answering them at all.
No.
Yeah.
She put it out. She put it out in the public forum. Was massively ridiculed in the mass media for this generally, but listening to her story last night, I have to say, I found it fascinating. It is something that would be worthy of further research.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Whatever way you want to view it, a road trip alert. We're going to Ireland, everybody. We're going to Ireland to meet up with Amanda.
Who do I know in Ireland who's got a spare bedroom?
Well, funny enough, I'm going there apparently this year, so I'll let you know.
EasyJet got a sale on. Other airline providers are available. But in all fairness, the one thing that I'm taking away from the whole Amanda story is that poor woman has been through so much.
Yeah. She's been through hell. Whatever way you want to look at it, that woman has been through hell on so many different levels. You know what I mean? Including her exposure to the media. Yeah.
And still comes out of it smiling and happy and... Take my hat off to the lady for that because she is so forthcoming, so open that I'm not so sure personally I would be strong enough to be that open if I'd been through what she has. I know that when I'm at that point of no return, if you like, I completely withdraw from the world. Mm-hmm. So I don't go on social media. I don't speak to my friends. That's how people know if I'm okay or not, because I'll completely withdraw. Mm-hmm. Mm. For her to fight and come out the other end of it, I take my hat off to that lady.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. I found her very sane sounding, very credible in her information, particularly regarding the spiritual working she does. And it did leave me, like you say, I ain't sitting in one camp on this. I've got 2 or 3 ideas about it. And one thing I do is actually respect the lady, because she gave a hell of a lot of information last night, some of it incredibly personal. And respect to that lady for being so open and honest about her experience. And this is what it's down to, her personal experience. And she was open and honest enough to talk to us about it. So great for us. You know, and thoroughly
and so
interesting.
in depth, like you say, you know, so in depth. She didn't have to give us all of that information at all. She could have just given us the bare bones of the situation and left it at that.
Yeah.
But she was so forthcoming. She answered any questions that we threw at her. I mean, don't get me wrong, there were so many more questions. I've got a diary full of questions for that lady. You could have taken that interview one of 2 ways. You could have gone in all guns blazing, trying to discredit the lady, but that's not what we're about. We wanted the meat on the bones. We wanted to know the ins and outs of everything.
Yeah. No different from any other guest that we get on, and we deal with all of them with respect and honesty, you know. And I don't think you've ever had.
You've got to do it that way because I mean, no matter, you know, even in a different case, someone could come to you and they need help, and if they come to you with a complete story that does sound really wacky and out of the box sort of thing, even that needs investigating. Whether or not it's a case of psychologically, you know, they need help or something, it still needs looking at and
but it takes a lot to be that honest.
Yes, absolutely.
I totally agree. And I go back to a case that old Harry Price came across, which was of a talking mongoose. And now, how batshit crazy does that sound? Now, I thought, if someone brought that case to me, I would laugh it off and not even bother. But Harry Price, and I never understood it, Harry Price went and investigated that. And I thought, why would somebody with his credibility and his way of working, why would he even consider looking at a case like that? And I went on a little trip and asked a lot of paranormal people whether or not they would investigate it. And everybody was saying yes, they would investigate that, because you don't know until you've investigated what is going on. And it could possibly be something completely different to what you thought. So why wouldn't you investigate it?
See, that's it. I mean, that person could be suffering from mental health issues, whatever.
No way to talk about me while I'm sat here, Paul.
But then, equally, you could have actually found a talking mongoose.
You never know. And on that note...
And on that bombshell, we've come to the end of the show. What's happening on the world of Parasearch this week, Kerry?
Okay, so tomorrow night we have got a poll up on the Parasearch Radio group page, ready for the Haunted Histories tomorrow night. Jack the Ripper show is actually at the head of the leaderboard, no matter what everybody else is trying to add into that poll.
Not ask you. Are we not asking you any questions?
No, we're not asking me. I will be doing my Q&A on the Parasearch Radio group page at an undisclosed date in the future. So you lot are going to have to wait for that one. But it's looking like Jack the Ripper is going to be played out tomorrow night. If you want to change that, pop over to the Parasearch Radio group page and add your vote onto the poll. Talking of polls, quickly, we have a little side thing going on the Parasearch Radio page.
Yes, we do.
I think Mr. Ashley Nib should do a live Q&A session. Now, he's taken the rug out from under my feet and put it on his own wall, a poll of whether or not he should do a Q&A session. So he said that if he could get 10 people or more interested in him doing a live Q&A, then to go over and vote, they need to register their vote. So I'm calling out to everybody in the Parasearch Radio world, please go over to Ashley Nib's page and register your vote for him to do a live Q&A.
Where is this?
Well, he said he's put it on his page. So I will check that out and share the link into the Parasearch Radio group page. So he's not getting away with this. Anyway, going forward.
Just don't make up 10 profiles though, and that.
I don't think we'll have to.
I don't think we'll have to.
Mr. Nib, we will see you on the Q&A.
Yeah, right. Oh, so many ways to skin a cat, Mr. Nib. You just don't realise it. On Thursday evening, PSH Radio have got Brooks Paranormal in the studio with them. On Saturday, we have our very own Paul Rook on the Parasearch Radio group page doing his Q&A this week. He's going live at 6:30 in the evening, so please join him live and he will answer any question you want to ask him. And then on Sunday evening, on the Spirit Dimension, gosh, they're all balking at this. I don't understand why. On Sunday evening on the Spirit Dimension, I'm joined by the lovely Kalea Sherrill, who was the paranormal resident advisor for the Stanley Hotel. She's on the board of the Talking Board Historical Society, and she walked 500 miles across northern Spain for a spiritual journey. So I'm looking forward to talking to her. Yeah, that's what we've got coming up. Don't forget, if you miss any of our shows, pop over to our YouTube channel and click like, share and subscribe. And Paul, carry on.
Okay, awesome. So there's not much for me left to say other than thank you for joining me in the chat room. Thank you, Gemma, for turning up tonight.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you, Kerry. So it's good night from me.
And it's good night from me.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.